The coronavirus continues to wreak havoc across the world, from China through Israel to the United States, from the airline industry to the sale of different cleansers, to anything and everything imaginable already. And we're beginning to realize even this past week within the Sprung community that we are somewhat, certainly for the past week, at center stage. When we find ourselves being mispalo for Eliezer, Yitzchak, Ben Shifra, and his entire family, they should be blessed with a speedy refuah shlema, and anyone else suffering from the virus itself. And we find ourselves hearing about things that have never occurred within our generation, namely the closing of a beis medrash, where Bachrim can no longer continue to come in and learn necessarily today because someone was in a beis medrash who attended a wedding, and someone at the wedding had been in Italy or China or Israel or a room near another individual. The closing of day schools, so our children are being denied the ability to sit and to learn. Such drama, such fright, shilas that have been raised and are being publicized regarding the reading of Kriyas Megillah for an individual who needs to stay at home this forthcoming Purim, and the permissibility of listening through a phone to the Kriya taking place in the shul or a kollel or a beis medrash. The suggestions that perhaps this forthcoming Shabbos Kodesh, people should no longer be extending their hands to each other to wish one another a good Shabbos. People should be grabbing their friends on Purim to wish them a freilich in Purim, because we don't want to, God forbid, communicate anything. Maybe we can't even stretch out our hand and touch the Sefer Torah. We shouldn't be kissing mezuzahs in common places. It's a very, very serious thing. And I thought to myself, shouldn't there be within the Seder this week something to speak to what's going on? And I found something that I'd like to share with you. All of us know the adage that all that glitters is not gold. Not everything that looks golden is really golden. Not everything that seems to be golden really is of such an alloy. And so, for example, in all of us have myriad examples that we could bring to mind. We could look at a particular marriage, and this was a marriage that was always hailed as being a perfect example of shalom bayis and how a husband should treat a wife and a wife should treat a husband. And suddenly, the marriage and the family dissolves. We can look at a business that's been around for 25, 50, 100 years, and suddenly is defunct. We can look at a family that was always known for its wonderful avas achim, for its wonderful fraternity, and suddenly we see people who are warring with each other at the door of lawyers for the percentage of the estate that has been left to them from the patriarch or the matriarch. And we suddenly say to ourselves, oh, you know what? All that glitters isn't necessarily gold. But comes along the Znaim Torah, and he says, why is it that in this week's Sedra, tucked away at the very conclusion of the Parshas Tetzaveh that deals primarily with the Big Day Kahuna, we have one of the Klei HaMikdash, we have one of the Kalim that was apparently left out from the set of Truma. And of all of the Kalim, it's nothing less than the Mizbeach HaZahav, than the golden altar upon which there was the Haktoras, there was the bringing of the special spices that were brought every single day after, in the morning, and towards the end of the afternoon, after the bringing of the Korban Tomich of Bein HaArbayim, and before the Atavas HaNeiros for the kindling of the menorah. And this Ketores was so strong and so powerful and so supportive, giving chizik, giving a sense of chiyus, of life and closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for on behalf of the entirety of Klal Yisrael, that it spread all the way to Yericho. Why did it get left out almost as an afterthought from the Sedra of Truma and was first placed in our Sedra of Tetzaveh? And listen what is suggested by the Haznaim Torah. Says Rav Sorotzkin Zatzal, the reason is because if you look at the Klei HaMishkan found in the Sedra of Truma, not a one of them has an understudy. Not a one of them has a second. So if something happens to the menorah, you can't pull out the understudy menorah from the back room. Similarly to the Mizbeach that is found in the Chatzar upon which the Korbanos are brought, similarly to the Shulchan, no such thing as being able to function properly in accordance with the Avodah found in the Mishkan or the Mikdash without those things being in a state of perfection. Yet, however, says the Znaim Torah, we find that what? We find that when it comes to the Mizbeach HaKatoras, Mizbeach HaZav, we find that if something happens to that and it's rendered unusable, according to the Rambam, the Hilchos Tmidim and Musafim, you could be makriv the Ketoras, you could bring the the incense on the spot in the Heichal, in the Kodesh, upon which the Mizbeach HaZahav would normally stand. You'll just bring it not atop the altar, but rather on the ground. Says L'Znaim Torah, isn't it interesting that if the Mizbeach HaZahav, the Mizbeach HaTorah, were to have been included in the Seder of Truma, we would have looked at the two altars and we would have said, one altar is set in place by Adama, by grounds, filled and stabilized by earth. That's why it's called Mizbeach Adama. Oh yes, it's covered. The Atzei Shitim, the wood is covered, but it's covered with copper. Very beautiful, but it's not gold. Whereas the Mizbeach in the Kodesh, it's golden, overlaid in its entirety with golden. It has the keser, right? And it has the crown as well. It's far more magnificent than the Mizbeach Adama. And we would have thought to ourselves, indeed, the Mizbeach HaZahav, which glitters, is far more golden and far more to be appreciated than the Mizbeach HaAdama that's covered with Adam and Chelev on a daily basis of all the karbanos. Says L'Znaim Torah, it's not included in that Sedra so that we should never have made that mistake, because we have to appreciate that the Mizbeach upon which on a daily basis all the karbanos are brought and need be appropriately stationed and in a state of perfection for any sacrifice to be brought, it's grounded in earth and is covered only in copper. But that's a Mizbeach that's indispensable. And then we use it every day and we get used to it and we see the blood and the fats. How golden is genuinely really that Mizbeach. Perhaps even more golden than the Mizbeach HaZahav to be found in the Kodesh, but that is at the end of the day not really indispensable. And I thought to myself, all the things that we're taking a step back from now and asking ourselves, should we be doing them? Shaking the hands, entering the Beis Medrash, giving my chavrisa a hug, kissing the Sefer Torah, kissing the mezuzah. All these things that we take for granted on a daily basis, that we never make a big deal on. It's not the golden anniversary that has invitations sent out and a lot of planning. It's not the golden event of a bar mitzvah and a bas mitzvah, of a bris. It's not the golden events that we speak of as milestone events. They're day-to-day things that we take for granted. And what we're really being told by this week's Parsha is not to take them for granted whatsoever, but rather to take them as opportunities to utilize them and take advantage of them appropriately, and then turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, thank you so much, Hashem Yisparach, for all that you give me on a daily basis that I never think about, that I never typically thank you for. Thank you so much. And I will not fail to appreciate them again. Have a wonderful Shabbos.